This game truly needs no introduction. It is basically the godfather of all card games. It's Magic the Gathering. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Dude, Where's My Cards? Where we primarily evaluate strategy card games from both a designer's perspective and an average gamer's perspective. As always, my name is Jordan, and my name is Brendan. Yes, so my name is Brendan, and I'm here with Jordan.
Episode 5, it only took that many to make it a rest.
What was episode 2, where it was me, myself, and I?
Yeah.
So, I'll get it down eventually.
It's okay, work in progress.
Yeah, so Brendan, Jordan, and we're talking Magic the Gathering, Wizard of the Coast trading card game.
Okay, so looking at what we got today, Magic the Gathering, mostly known as MTG by us non-weebs, is a collectible and digital card game created by Richard Garfield, released in 1993, as Brendan said, by Wizard of the Coast, now known as Hasbro, just a super giant out there. Magic was the first trading card game ever. It was the first one out there, which is cool. It has approximately 35 million players as of December 2018 statistics. So it's probably even higher now with COVID. Probably even more people playing the online one. But has over 20 billion Magic cards produced from the period of 2008 to 2016. So in an 8-year period, there's over 20 billion cards that were produced.
A ton of cards.
It's an insane amount. And that's where it grew its most popularity, actually, was in that period of time where all those cards came through. So the download of what the game is, each game of Magic represents a battle between two planeswalkers who cast spells, use artifacts, and summon creatures as monsters to defeat your opponent, typically, but not always, by draining them of their starting life points. So kind of some cool little tidbits I noticed about it. The original set of rules were actually played as an ante-system. So what would happen is each player would each take out one random card from their deck and put it off to the side, and the winner would then grab both of those cards. So it was based off of the standard gambling system, which was since removed because of the collectible aspect, but it was never actually designed to be a collectible card game. It was to be an ante-based competitive, like marbles. Is kind of where he went for, which is interesting to say because it's now the most popular collectible card game out there for North America.
Yep.
So, each set includes a few different cards, and it's gone viral. There's so many sets, I didn't even want to look at how many different sets are out there right now.
It doesn't end.
It keeps going, yeah. 2019, they were inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame. Currently, there are 16 different formats in Magic. That doesn't include the 5 online Magic formats. So there's pretty much a format out there for everybody for the main part. So it's kind of a little bit of a history and background to what Magic is. Most of you should know.
Just a little bit of background, because Magic's been around forever. You could dig and dig and dig.
Yeah.
You hit the key points.
Yeah, those are the main ones. So kind of looking at it, so I'm going to take a look at it from the design perspective this time around, being the foremost experienced Magic player, and you being relatively, doesn't play it that.
Before the spoiler alert, I crap all over this game. I don't actually, but...
But you've never been the biggest fan of Magic, which is cool, because then we get two perspectives, because this is my core game.
Yeah,
so.
Go for it.
From a design perspective, first off, 1993 is when this game came out. The cards have changed slightly, but not drastically, which tells me that what they chose to do works. And they are pretty much the staple. Where they have placed their damage and health, every other card game in the future kind of has to follow that same damage and health. I like how most of the data is prescribed on the card, and as you get further into the card game and you get newer sets, they lessen the words on it. So flying no longer says this creature can only be blocked by flying or reach. It just says flying.
Yeah.
It switched from a word and then context to now just a word, and if you don't know what that it is, you can look it up in the rule book rather than it being all there.
What it is, they're thinking, what the heck are you doing getting into our game right now?
But when you first originally...
Where were you for the last 20 years?
When you first came into this game, the first original cards had the full definition of what every ability did. So, which is great, because when you're introing a game, you want as much context in the cards as when you're playing it. So that was a good take point. You really also can't knock them for the amount of variation in this game. The ideas that come from this Magic are riddled through every other game you'll ever come across that's a card game to some sort of fabric. Like this game is...
This is the godfather. It is the root of pretty much every other card game in existence.
So from a design perspective, you really can't ignore this game. You can't ignore things, even if you're not, like you said, you're not even been the biggest fan, but you've looked at this game for like ideas because they flow from this. And there's just a lot of great concepts, from the mana being a resource system to a little bit of a chance in this game, but it's still skill-based.
Yeah.
And for me, from a design perspective, the formats is really where it gets interesting. There's the standard format, 60 card decks, max of 4 cards per deck, starting life point of 20. You battle it out. Then you have only from this set to this set, only current sets, every set, which is legacy, modern, which is from a certain set onwards till now. There's just all these different sets out there for what you want to play, and really what your budget is, because some of these decks can range from a couple $100, $60, $40 to thousands, especially if you're playing the most meta competitive decks right now, which is where we get into a little bit. I'll talk about. I don't love some of it, but at its core, there's lots of great principles here, and you can pick up these starter booster packs. And you talked about in Digimon how a lot of the starter decks would have those boosters.
Yeah.
Most Magic starter decks have 3 boosters in them.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Oh, of course they do.
And not just of current sets, but of a couple sets before. So it's like, hey, some things that you might be able to use.
Here's some new stuff. Here's some old stuff that you might think is pretty cool.
And from purchasing in deck slice, I really like, from a design perspective, every time they release a new set, like a new starting set, so when they do like starting set 19, 20, 20, 21, they always do a deck builder set. So it's like $23 and you get 300 cards from common to rare in the set. It's all predetermined, but there's enough to build 2 or 3 decks of that set in there to get anyone to start whenever they want to start.
But you're not getting the best cards, because they want those.
Those are the rare booster packs and pull. But anyway, so that's from my design perspective. There's just so much in this game that it's really hard to pinpoint certain things. But really a big thing for me is the formats. I love the formats, and the reason that Magic is still a thing for me is because of formats.
Mm-hmm. So for me, as a average gamer, a person who hasn't done too much Magic in his lifetime, it's a very interesting, different take for me, because when you talk about strategy card game players, it's Magic the Gathering. Everyone has a foundation of that. Everyone has a championship route. I play competitively. I've done this. I've done that. I don't. So I get to look at it from a little bit more of a outsider's perspective, which is kind of cool. For me, I talk about things like theme, where it's generic fantasy. Never going to go wrong with that. Everyone can jump into that. Rules for the game at the most basic core level of understanding how to play Magic. Easy.
Yeah.
Super, super simple. And I get that as you go into further expansions, new additions for rules and alterations.
It's per card
to rules,
rule that it really makes a difference.
Learning new terms and remembering new terms, all that stuff. But that's every card game. Like the base, if you can get the base down well and grow from there, that's easy. Like I've never had a problem with learning how to play Magic. That's just simple to me.
Yeah.
I want to talk about design and art, because you told me, yes, it's timeless. Yes, everyone's kind of used this as a standard for the attack and HP and all that. But to me, they haven't changed in when was the existence? 1990s? Something?
1993.
They really haven't
It's as old as I am.
They haven't changed since then.
Yeah, and the layout of the cards. They've added full art and other things like that.
Yes,
but
they have jumped on the full art train, but from my perspective,
it really hasn't. It hasn't changed dramatically.
Is functional.
Yeah.
Not their card. Their card design is functional, and that to me is a little bit lacking when you see all the new card games coming out and what they're doing. It's like, yes, could you? But at the same time, I understand as a normal gamer, like they haven't changed their winning script in how long.
Yeah.
And now they're not going to. It doesn't make any sense, but you gotta give them credit for the art, though.
Yeah.
Look at the cards. The cards are pretty.
Like, I think there's thousands and thousands of different artists, because they are constantly purchasing different rights and different artists.
And the funny thing for me is that you talked about is that as a player who doesn't have much experience with Magic, to me one of the best parts of Magic is the different formats, the different ways you can get started, the different ways you can get involved in the game.
Yeah.
Like, it's much easier for me to jump in and do a cube.
Yeah.
Because someone who's been playing the game for 20 years is going to be marginally better for me just from game knowledge, not because they have 20 years of collecting cards.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of a format that I think is kind of interesting. That there's different ways you can play, and it's for all skill levels.
Mm-hmm.
Where yes, at the competitive end, you're going to get hosed sometimes because it costs so much money to play.
Yeah, and there's cheap competitive decks and new creative.
Game.
Yeah,
that's every card game. So I'm just nitpicking, but I'm saying one of the best parts about Magic to me is the different formats you can play.
So as an experienced player and a newbie, it's the same level. We both like that.
And it's supported at multiple levels. It's not just house rules. Like there are established formats that people can play.
Yeah. We'll get into that a little bit more, but like I have a couple of points for the final. Just like there's a couple new themes that have come out that even iterate that even further. Actually, one that just came out a few months ago, so we'll talk about that a bit. But we'll jump right into the impression category, which you'll be shocked and awed. Starting right off with theme, I gave it a 5 because of.
But there is no theme.
There's a theme. There's a story. There's so much to every card. Every card has a background and a story to it.
I know, it's got its whole Planewalkers, Mojo, Blojo, and whatever you want to call it. Just Magic has never been a game to me where a theme matters. Do you go and actually look to see what each card does in the storyline? And
sure it does. The number one reason I got into Magic when I started was because they had goblins. I dove into goblins. I still have a goblin deck. Goblins are so the fact that I could theme a deck completely around one character archetype. That's theme. There's theme to me. There was something that drew me in. Dragons is another one that's a theme. There's background to why those are in there. It's not just like, oh, this is a goblin.
Yeah.
He does nothing. He's not important. Or it's, oh, this is a legendary goblin. This is what he's done in the storyline.
But like, you gave Digimon a 4, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
that is a legitimate theme, strong IP. Like, if I wanted to write a story, I would not write a story about Magic the Gathering.
There's way more background in Magic, I think, than Digimon.
Because Magic is D&D.
It was, yeah. It originally variated
any kind of
as
story that comes from into Magic is a D&D storyline.
And D&D's have a huge theme. I'll give them a 5 too.
Yeah, but this is not D&D. This is Magic. There's like, to me, it's not like I'm getting, as I said in the past, Omnimon, Black or Greymon. Like these are iconic characters within a theme and storyline. To me, there are no iconic characters.
Oh, you have. That's because you're not a player. The Garruk, Jace, any one of the original 5 Planeswalkers. There's 27, I think, Planeswalkers currently in the storyline. But any one of the original 5, like Jace is my favorite Planeswalker. Like, and I've been a fan of Jace from when he first was released, and that's
like because of a card. Or because of his story?
Because of his story. Like, there's 15 card versions of him. He's got Jace the Illusionist, Jace but Jace as a character, if anything's got branded Jace on it, I'm buying it in a heartbeat. Because as a character, he's my favorite, and there's background to why it is. So that's why maybe I have a biased theme, because
clearly I'm not fully aware of the world of MTG.
There is an incredibly long story, and every card has a background. Every legendary creature has a story to why it is. From like legendary dragons to where they were in the wars and what happened in the wars. Mm-hmm. So to me, there's a lot of things, but that's because I'm in it.
Yeah.
Like I know what's going on more. To you, if you just look at the cards, you don't know this background, the theme to it. Maybe you don't think there is much to it.
Yeah. And as a new player, I wouldn't want to learn all the theme. I see how many billions of cards.
Yeah.
I mean, those are just like every single card printed. It's not like there's 20 billion unique Magic cards. That'd just be absurd.
No.
But I wouldn't have any interest in that. Like, I'm going to go off script here and we're going to talk about League of Legends for a second. I like League of Legends because of the lore in League of Legends. I like using the characters individually in League of Legends because their story is cool or they do something for me more than just a character.
Yeah.
But that's easier to invest into because there's less characters and one character can consist of all of my actions. Where in Magic, you have 60 cards in a deck.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't be able to find 60 cards to have interesting storylines. Or like, you have your Jace, that's great, and you buy everything for him, but I don't know if I'd ever find that one card diving in now as a late person.
And that's, you'd have to give it a try to know, but like for me, yeah, I have a blue deck themed around Jace. Like I said, Goblins, Krenko Mob Boss is my main legendary creature in there. In the game, the whole deck is themed around him creating a mob of goblins to swarm people. goblins are always my biggest creature. Like, that's my favorite villain. Like, I'm more of a villain. Like, I prefer villains.
Tactics going on over
yeah,
there.
but so like goblins are my thing. So that's where I started in Magic, and I still have a deck, and I love it. But when I started playing more and introduced these planeswalkers, because planeswalkers had a background, but they were never in the game. Mm-hmm. You were the planeswalker.
Yeah, I know very much.
And then later on, they introduced an aspect where you can summon planeswalkers, which are like a secondary player to you. They have their own life total that changes.
Yeah, I think you actually made me play a deck where there's planeswalkers in.
So they do their own abilities. They have their own thing. They're a separate life total as well. So to kill them, somebody has to attack them directly. But so that's where they introduced like the originals. Jace and Garruk were the green and blue ones. Chandra's the red, Liliana's black, and I think is it Ajani is the white? No, it's whatever. There's the 5 core ones that originally came out, and I latched on to Jace instantly. He's this cool, hooded blue character that really relies on spells and manipulation. And Garruk was
made you felt cool.
Garruk was the other one because he's like a very I'm just gonna ram things down your big creatures at you. That was the theme. So again, I grabbed onto these, and that kind of helped build it. There's now, like I said, quite a few different planeswalkers out there, from dragons and multicolored and all these other things that go on, merfolk. But Jace still to this day is my favorite. So there's theme there for me. But that's theme.
All right, yeah. Move on to rules then.
Going on to rules, 4 for me. It's very straightforward and easy to read. I did pull up a rule book just to relook at them. It's a 4 because the initial rules are there. It's not a 5 because of the amount of keyword text that you have to know or read up on.
And I have it as a 4 as well, and that's pretty much my exact reasons. It's easy to learn, but because it constantly evolves, your rules can never be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're always changing.
Modify as it goes. So to me, to give a 5 would mean like the rules are just like one of the greatest aspects of the game. And to some games, having great rules makes it a huge aspect of the game. And for Magic, rules are functional.
And sometimes the rules are really hard to, even in the FAQs, you really have to dive. Like for the longest time when I was learning Magic,
the whole chain block thing as well. Magic is
chain block, or
chain block.
Priority. That's the word. Priority.
Yes.
That's complicated. But the other big thing for me is...
But it's also the birthplace of all that for all future games.
All future games. Yeah. But indestructible and infect or negative counters are the 2 biggest things that I had problems with as a younger player. Indestructible's text is like, this card cannot be destroyed. Mm-hmm. Pretty straightforward, right? So the only way to really eliminate it is exile it or banish it. Infect or -1 counters reduces a card's attack and defense by -blank. So an indestructible card says it cannot be destroyed. But if you reduce its health to 0 or below, it's technically destroyed. So what happens to that card was always the biggest confusion. And the rules aren't exactly clear on it. You really had to look into FAQs.
Like what happens when a unit's stats are reduced to 0,
to 0 or below.
It cannot be destroyed?
Yeah. So it supersedes and the card's destroyed anyways. Because something cannot have a stat of 0. It overrules. So it's just like what rule overrules what? Is it the card text? Which typically is what happens. So that's why, again, rules are 4. Yep. It's pretty simple, but some of the complexities of the game do bring it down a bit, just for learning. Makes it interesting, but a little hard to learn. Design and art. For me, art right away would push this to a 5. But I do agree a little bit with you how the design of the cards haven't changed, and at times they can be very wordy. There's a lot going on. So it's a 4 for me. I put it at a 4. I think the art is amazing. There's so many different variations. There's something out for... Bob Ross has a couple versions of his cards in this game that they've done co-host with. There's Walking Dead cards. They've done so much different art styles, and even pop culture media brought in. But just overall, when we really look at these things, like... Here, I'll try to throw this one up on this camera. Like, it's shiny, and you can't really see it clear, but... It's an incredible looking card. All these cards are always very pretty. So to me, art brings it up. But the style of the card, it can be kind of bland, and a lot of times you don't really pay attention to the art. You're only reading the text. So it's a 4 for me.
That blandness is the reason why I have it as a 3.
Okay.
Like, yes, the art is great. But when I look at Magic's art, it's not flashy art. Like, it's solid quality, stand on its own art pieces. Where I almost become accustomed to so much over-the-top art effects on cards now. Like, you look at Pokemon, they got full art. Their characters are pretty much jumping out of cards now. You look at Vanguard, which I used to play, and they got like wicked, crazy gold effect borders and two cards that can play as one, and like there's just so many full effects of cards that are going on now that Magic has just kind of kept to their world and said, nope, our way's pretty good. We're just gonna ride true, and there's nothing wrong with that. And as I said, 3 is what I give a lot of things when it's there, it's good, it's functional.
And I agree with that because, like you said, Magic, you look at, God forbid I use it, but you go on TikTok and you go on these Magic pages that I've seen of people who make...
Table. Here goes TikTok.
But there's people who've made these cards into something that they're not, like they've changed it into full arts by amending
like
it.
Orcas.
Or they take 6 of the same cards, cut them, and make them 3-dimensional. Those are really cool, and those are things that would be really cool to see in the game. But like you said, those are third parties doing it.
Have you ever seen someone do stuff where like they will take a card and they'll scratch off everything but the picture, and then they'll manually watercolor in what the rest of the coherent scene would be?
Yes, yeah.
Because I've
changing
seen
it
that
to
for
a complete
Pokemon cards.
Yeah,
but I've never seen someone do that for a Magic card. And I imagine that it would look
it's amazing.
Great if they did
like
it.
Magic did do, like for these lands, for example, we have just the basic land, right? They did a full art where they've eliminated this entire space just becomes an image, and
because
those are
you don't need any text for that. It's just
it's a mountain.
Land. Yeah.
So that really makes it gorgeous, but you lose that because they didn't. They like you said, they haven't changed much, but if you'd have to look, but. The past few sets, they've been releasing 10 or 12 cards that have these really cool effects.
They haven't changed much.
Yeah.
Like, when I say that, you have to go back to 1993.
Yeah.
Like, that...
I'm saying, though, the
to
core...
where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not saying that they're not in the middle of making more progressive changes, which they might. And who knows? Like, there's nothing wrong with the cards.
I don't think they're changing the core
establish that
cards,
for
though.
myself. There is nothing wrong with the cards.
Yeah.
The game plays great as they are, unless there is a huge demand for an overhaul. They should never change. This to them is a cash cow. This thing just, we're going to keep pushing out cards and people are going to keep buying it.
Yep. Okay, so design and art.
Yep.
4 for me, 3 for you.
Yep.
Okay. Complexity. I have a hard time giving out 5s, but I give it a 4.
Yep.
I just think it's good. It's sometimes overly complex, but it's there so that the replayability is there. So it's a 4.
And to me, it's a 4 also.
Okay.
Pretty much the exact same reasons. I would only give, it's hard to give it a 5 for complexity, unless you feel that the game isn't going to change much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's a...
Yeah, if it was never changing,
LCG
it was like...
expansion card game, like, if it's...
Had a definite
fairly definite, then you can tell for sure that this complexity is where it needs to be. But to me, the reason why I give it a 4 is because there's just so many cards.
Yeah.
And the complexity of the game, to me, is what is meta among so many cards.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need complexity in a game that lasts this long.
Yeah, and that's why it's gone 27 years.
Analyze, replay, balance, tweak your decks, replay, balance, tweaks.
And meta changes for sets.
Yeah.
Or formats.
Yep.
Specifically. So, okay, so I complexity is a 4.
Yep.
Jumping to our game category. Gameplay. I have it an 8. Again, as a huge fan of Magic, why it's not a 10 is the formats. It really depends on what format you're playing. If you say, hey, let's play Cube, probably going to be a 10 for me. Hey, you want to play Commander? Probably going to be a 10 for me. You say, hey, we want to play Modern? I'm going to ask you what deck you're playing before I even say yes. Because if you say, oh, I'm playing Splinter Twin, or, I don't know what the newest meta is anymore, Existence Shadow or whatever. But
because you don't like playing.
Because I'm like, oh, that's a
you
2-turn
like
deck win, no matter what I do. That's not fun.
Yeah.
If you say, hey, we're going to play, let's go buy starter decks and we're playing, that's a 10. If we're playing with starter decks, no changes, and we're just playing Magic of what Magic was meant to be before you go into fine-tuning, it's super fun. But if you're playing against somebody who's really fine-tuned their deck to not care about what you're doing, and it's it's like 2 to 4 turn win either way, it's not fun to me. If it's, going to 15 turns and we're playing things and doing things, that's interesting. But it's never that great if it's 2 to 4. Hyper competitive is not where it's at for me. So it's 8.
And because I'm a newer player, I'm a 5. I never got into the hype of Magic. And going back at it now, it's an outdated system to me.
Yeah.
I feel like a hypocrite because of our card designs that we've done. But anytime there is a resource system that requires you to use cards in your playing deck to generate resource, I don't like it.
Yeah.
It makes the game feel slow, but at the same time there's ways to hyper abuse it.
There's ways to make it fun. We figured out in our tests, we figured out ways that you can make that mechanic work.
Yes, there's no doubt about it. You can make it work, and it's a good staple for everything else that has come after it to evolve from it, because everyone can look at this system and say it works.
How do we make it more interesting or better? Yeah.
And a lot of those times it fails, which has to say that this system isn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
But like I could look at someone like Pokemon, where they essentially took the land system and said, but we're going to attach our lands to the Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And make the Pokemon free, but make their abilities cost lands.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting tweak to me, but that's another, like, Pokemon's fun to me too. That's completely off topic. But it's another game where I struggle with the fact that the resource comes from the deck.
Yeah.
It's not a function built into the game.
So then that's where the chance aspect of it comes into. Like, that's one of the major issues of Magic is, you know, getting mana flooded or mana screwed, not being able to draw what you need if you're playing multicolored. Yes. And that's a feel-bad mechanic.
Every Magic player I have talked to hates whatever you call mana blocking or...
Mana flooding is getting too much.
No, the other one.
Mana screwed is what I call it. But just
that to me is just, like, whenever...
You draw 2 mana for 15 turns.
It's the number one thing. Like, they don't mind getting milled out. They don't mind... pretty much everything else. They don't mind getting blocked their card actions. It's just like, if I get mana screwed,
it's not fun because you're not playing anything.
Off, yeah.
There's and consistency and ways to fix it, but it's always going to happen, no matter how you work for it. So that's, again, gameplay 8. There's times that it's frustrating, but majority of the time it would be a 10.
Yeah. But
there's times that bring it down.
Like, to me, giving it a 5 is fairly positive for me.
Yeah, that's like a rip-off to me, but that's okay. Because we both get a few that I can disagree.
Because you say, hey, yeah, someone wants to invite you to do a cube. You're like, I'm a 10, I'm all in. Someone calls me to do a cube, I go, yeah, I have to vacuum tonight. Like, it's like, because I never got into it. There's no big woo for me. It's just
okay. All right. Gameplay, going back, depth. I've got it at a 5. It's impossible to not give this the max amount of depth because the max amount of variations in this game are infinite. It's still going on, and I could choose from whatever I want. And meta's always changing. I really don't like looking at meta decks, but looking from a gamer's perspective or a designer's perspective and saying, what theme do I want to go? You can't even make a list on paper of the amount of themes that you could play in this game right now.
Yeah.
So it's a 5 for me.
And I give it a 3. Just kidding. I give it a 5.
Okay.
How could you not give it a 5?
I was going to be so choked. This is like the amount of options you have in this game.
You got 20 plus, 30 plus years of depth almost.
Yeah. You're only looking at, like, you know, the 6 colors, you know, the 5 colors in colorless and artifacts with 7.
To me, if you want to play a strategy, if there's a certain style you want to play, you can find it in Magic.
If you want to play squirrels, you can play squirrels.
Oh, that's the other thing, like...
Cats. You can play cats.
You can play cats, you can play squirrels, but if you want to play decks that purposely mill, if you want to play decks that mana ramp, if you want to play decks that mana screw, like every play style you feel you want to do, there is something out there for you.
There's even themes about making yourself lose. If you run out of cards, you win. There's themes that are like counterplay what the typical win-loss strategy are. So there you go. Yeah, I agree. Depth is 5.
Yep.
Post-play category, this will be a disagreement, but I gave it a 10 for replayability. I gave gameplay low, but I am never going to stop playing Magic, and I'm never going to... Like, Magic is I can sit and play Magic all night because of all the different depths, all the different decks that I can pull out. I own, like, 30, so I can play it all night and never have to stop. I just change decks, and it's a new game.
Now, what's 10 minus 6?
4?
That's what I gave it.
Oh.
I gave it a 4.
Oh!
And that to me is generous.
Awful human being.
Because I never want to replay this game. If I have time to play Magic, I have time to do...
You're coming and playing Cube, and I'm teaching you to like this game.
I could play infinitely more satisfying games. Including every game we have designed.
Yes, that's true. I see. But... Disagree. But it's just...
But this is also in your blood. This never got into my blood.
Yeah. It's like, like you
You're-
said, it's like saying league.
You are as close as you get to being an addict without an empty bank account. Because the two go hand in hand with this game. I mean, if you're an addict of anything, really, your bank account's empty, let's be honest.
It's true. Okay. Cost satisfaction. You give it a 4. With the pinnacle being that you're not one of those people that are playing standard and making a new deck every 2 years and spending $500 to $600 to make the deck relevant. That's might be feel bad unless you're actually playing competitive because you can win. But these cards hold value and they change value. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, you can buy a card now for $2 and it could sell for $40 and then drop down to $2. But most of the time, the cards aren't going to lose their value unless they're reprinted, and you should know that they're being reprinted. And even then, they lose value, but then eventually in a couple of years go back to where they were anyways. So the cost satisfaction is a 4. 5 is because it's a TCG. It still makes me mad. Or I would love to build every deck I've ever wanted to build, but my bank account and my mind go, no, Jordan, you don't need to spend $200 on another deck because you have 40 at home already.
Yeah.
So it's not a 5 because it's a TCG. You have to spend money, and usually a lot of money. And especially if you're playing in competitive, you have to spend a lot of money.
1.
Oh.
There is no satisfaction in spending money for me in this game. Because it's so old, I know the mechanics of this game. I don't need to spend money to learn Magic. Like, you learn Magic.
Well, you also have somebody who has 40 decks just a couple of blocks away from you, so.
You learn Magic from playing every other game in existence. Like, you literally can play every other game, go back to Magic, and you go, this is where it all came from. So, I would never spend money on this, and to me, I will never lose the stigma that Magic is a money game.
Yeah.
It is a game, someone told us at Gen Con as a joke, or it's not about, or it's the strongest card in the game is your parents' credit card.
Yeah.
And it's never been more true than for a game than Magic.
Yeah, it is a pay to win, but this is where, again, I really don't agree with it because of the formats. The formats changed this from a money-grabbing, suck your soul, lose everything, to maybe be relevant for a month.
Grabbing all of your money just for a little while. Just because they know you're not going to get, or they're not going to get your lifetime investment. Yeah. So they're going to casually reach into your pocket and grab.
Well, and they also have the format, which is paper, or pauper they call it, which is actually a proxy format. So they're encouraging people to still not even have to spend money, but play it.
I'm just a salty, non-MTG fan.
Okay.
I give that thing a 1 just because, I mean, I might deserve it too, but...
I mean, I see where it's coming from because it's a collectible card game. As soon as that's in there, it's not going to be usually high on most people's standards.
I've never once ever felt a need to even buy a starter deck or a booster pack.
Yeah, I can't walk through Walmart without going and looking to see what's out there to see if I need to get
I walk by and I see what kind of like Pokemon stuff is for sale, and I don't buy it, but that's the stuff that interests me because that's what I played when I was younger.
So
like, I have the original 1998 Pokemon cards in my system.
Yeah, that's where. So there you go. It's just I was always born and bred Magic.
Yeah,
never happened for you.
You were born cool, and I was born nerdy. Yeah, we got it.
So final score. Brendan's doesn't count, so we can just ignore his. But final score for me is 44 out of 50. I don't even think that's our highest. It might be my highest, but
wow, 44.
Yeah, it's up there. It's my favorite.
I got a 30. It's still a pass.
Well, that's not bad. Okay, that's better than I expected, considering what kind of garbage you were giving it.
And the best part, I still say it's a cash game.
Okay, good boy. You learned.
I'm not going to trash this. This game has too much value to every other card game in existence for me to trash it.
Yeah.
I'm just like objective versus subjective. Subjective opinion, I don't like Magic. It's not for me. Objective opinion, people love this game. It's a solid, well-supported game with tons of formats that people will like if they put the time into it. To me, it's just not for me, and that's what it is. So I'm not going to knock it because it's not for me. I'm not going to tell you that sushi is absolutely foul because you like sushi.
It's true. Yeah, okay.
I don't. It's not for
I
me.
love sushi. But okay, so for me, cash, very much cash, all formats. If you get enjoyment from it, you can get it. If you're going to play competitive, you can play competitive, you can win money. The cards are still going to hold value. Probably going to have to change your decks regularly. That's fine. It's cash across the board. Specifically for me, I love the Commander format. It's one of my favorite formats ever. It's 100 card decks, single tan format, which means one copy of every card only, except for lands. In non-basics, you can only have one. So there's no oh, I'm going to have 4 copies of this card in a 60 card deck and just use stuff to get to those cards faster.
Mm-hmm.
In Commander, it's very much like you have 1 copy of that card. If it's exiled or gone, it's gone. So I like that. The cube, huge fan of cube. It's really cool because you don't have to have anybody with other decks. You just bring your cube and say, okay, the 8 of us are playing Magic. Here's our cube, and we're going to build from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the new one that I was talking about earlier that just came out, real limited releases. It's 20 card packs of their new booster packs.
Oh, the half and halves, whatever. You put 2 together.
You take 2 of those booster packs, you slap them together, and that's your deck.
Yeah.
It's like a cross between Keyforge and Magic Smash Up
Is that the one?
from, is that Fantasy Flight, I believe? But
I want to say it was AEG. Wasn't
oh
it?
yes, it's AEG.
Yeah.
So Smash Up and Keyforge kind of smashed together. Magic saw what that did for early players and said, this is kind of interesting. So there's no building. You just buy these 2 packs. You shuffle the 40 card deck and you play it.
Seeing what the miners are doing and just like, oh, we're gonna come step on you now.
It's cool though. I love the idea because it gets new players into the game. Very minimal investment. $10 gets you a deck.
Yep.
I like
hoping for. If they can get you hooked, then you're done.
And I like it too for competitiveness because I'm not spending $2,000 on a deck. I'm spending $40 on a deck, and that's what I get to play, or
that
$20.
Becomes a competitive
and that's a competitive deck that I can play that has all the Magic aspects to it. So it's cool for an old player for me to see something like that. So that was kind of my last little final thoughts on that. Anything from you, B?
I don't have any final thoughts. Like, as I said before, objective opinion versus subjective opinion. I'm not a fan of the game, and that's just me, but I'm not going to knock it for being a great game with a great storied history.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Fair enough?
You're wrong, but yeah.
All right, then we'll sign off now. Thanks for watching, guys. Till next time. Thank you for tuning in to the DWMC podcast, a Paragon Professional Services production. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any comments or concerns about what you have heard, send us an email, contact@paragonstudiosmb.com. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you consume your podcasts, and leave a comment with a 5-star review if you feel so inclined. For those of you watching on YouTube, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below.